Welcome back to Renovations for Beginners with today's guest, Gareth Munton from Brisbane Certification Group. Gareth, just before we went to the break, you spoke about the development approval process. You mentioned impact and code accessible and the difference, and you touched on impact accessible as being can be a drawn out process. And it's interesting you mention that because a couple of weeks ago I was reading a Courier Mail news article. It was more of an editorial from a writer, a freelance writer, and he was complaining about the way the article, but I'll just give you a brief introduction to the article. It was about, at this stage he should have been sitting on his brand new deck, sipping a beverage, watching the view from his brand new deck, essentially. But at the moment, he's still in his cramped up, unrenovated house. And it was interesting to note there that there was a few comments. This was online, and there was hundreds of comments from a heap of people saying, "Oh yeah, my house, it's still in council. It's been like that for 9 months." Now, Gareth, it's a good time to tell the viewers, why do these situations occur?
Yep.
And just elaborate on.
Yeah. Usually with when there's a hold up in council, there usually is a genuine reason. Very rarely does it come to light that it is just a mistake that they've made. Because
mind you, a lot of the comments on these online articles were blaming the council. What are they doing? Are they sitting around drinking tea and eating biscuits? But inevitably it's more to do with the homeowners and their team rather than the council. Is that correct? That's
right, yeah. It's usually whoever has lodged the application to council or the applicant. It's usually not an error on their part, but probably a lack of understanding. When the application is lodged to council, in an ideal world, everything that council need would be in that application. So that when council look at the application, they have everything that they need to complete their assessment, and they can look at it, do their assessment, and issue the approval in one go. But unfortunately, it's not a perfect world, and it doesn't end up being like that. So the delays that can be experienced there usually are down to either the documentation not being provided, or the quality of the documentation not being up to scratch. Like the drawings could be very, very basic, or not be very clear to show exactly what work is being completed. And upon further assessment by council, it could be that additional reports or engineer's design could be required. Those reports could be anything from a stormwater flow report from a hydrologist, right through to a arborist report due to the removal of 2 trees that have got a family of koalas living in it. So it's just a real diverse range of the different applications and the reports that council require. And
a pretty good town planner would pick this up before the submission goes, right, you've got a stormwater or sewer line, so you will need a build over sewer issue to deal with and report. Yeah. And you've got 2 big gum trees that are in the other corner of the site that you want to pull down, so you'll need an arborist, as you said. So a good town planner will pick up all those, and it's just a really checklist.
That's right. Yeah, usually with with applicants who don't deal in this process on a daily basis, and the same for certifiers as well. Very rarely do we make those applications to council. So in that instance there, where there's a few issues that can sort of be identified fairly early on, it is best to engage a private town planner. They deal with these applications day in, day out, and they're in constant contact with council, and they're able to build up a bit of an idea as to what council will approve and won't approve. And they can advise you before it goes in to say, hey, look, let's reduce this roof pitch down, or let's reduce this deck by this amount, and that will probably get it through council faster. And like you say, they'll do that. They'll do an assessment and say, yeah, we need the arborist report, or you need the stormwater study done, so that you have all the reports all done, all the legwork's done at the beginning, goes off to council, and fingers crossed it gets approved in one go.
Yeah, because if it doesn't, when you submit an application, there's probably, let's say, a 2-week wait by the time the council goes through it all, then they may issue like a information request, which you mentioned, and
That's right.
and then when you got time to respond. So that delay you can add, like just for one item, you can add like about 3 to even 6 weeks by the time you get it back into council. So.
Yeah, I mean the council have got that 20 business day turnaround, so that's 4 weeks to begin with, and it then be at the end of that 4 weeks that you get told to provide 2 or 3 of those specialist reports. Each of those may take 4 weeks to get from those professionals. So yeah, you're looking at that's 2 months gone already. Whereas if you'd done all the legwork right at the beginning and paid the money to the private town planner, you'd only be a month down in time.
Yep. So sort of like, yeah, if you're engaging a town planner, like may save you like holding costs on land if that's an issue with renovators or renting elsewhere by the time before you get started. So like it pays to get a professional on board.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Now we just touched on a few costs. So obviously. Does it cost any more to send in more information to councils, or is it?
Usually the councils won't charge anything extra once those additional reports are provided. You'll probably find that the costs for those reports are what are unaccounted for at the beginning.
Yep.
So again, if you had the private town planner, you're paying the money to them to advise you what all the additional costs and reports are going to be needed, but also at the same token you're paying the money to reduce that time down.
Okay, so you have an initial council lodgement fee, yeah, but the big cost in development application is getting the reports done by various consultants that may not have been accounted for in the initial budget. Yeah. And also, like, is there any other development costs from councils? Like, it's only really water connection and sewer connections that are the big costs from councils, is it?
Correct. Yeah, yep. That's usually usually involved in subdivisions or new plumbing work. Yep. But apart from those, the water and the plumbing costs, it usually is just that first or initial development application fee that you pay to council. And in Brisbane that can range anywhere between sort of $500 and $2,000, and again that sort of depends on whether it's code accessible or impact accessible, like we talked about before. And the cost of probably a private town plan is about $2,000 as well. So all up, it could be anywhere between sort of say $3,500 to say $6,000.
Okay. Right. So just to recap, because we're going to wrap up. For a standard development application, like, correct me if I'm wrong, we're talking about 4 to 6 weeks. Is that sitting in council? And then if it's got any of the impact accessible items that may require information, that's when time gets added on. And if you don't have the information council needs, then that's further time going back to a consultant, then getting them to do a report and then handing it back to council. Is that correct?
That's exactly it. Yep.
Well, that kind of like wraps up the development application. Now, when we come back from our ad break, this is more your expertise, building application, isn't it?
That's right. We'll talk about the good stuff.
The good stuff. Oh, we'll take a quick break and we'll come back with Gareth after this break.